Everyone these days says that mirrorless cameras are the future and that DSLRs are old news, outdated, cooked, done. But honestly, that is not the full story, and there's still a solid case to be made for DSLRs in 2025, depending on what you shoot and how you like to shoot. So first off, what are the core differences between these two types of camera? Well, a DSLR, or digital single lens reflex camera, has a mirror inside it. One second. Better. Now, as light comes through the lens, obviously it's not in the front now, it hits this mirror and bounces up into this optical viewfinder above. So what you see is the actual scene that's viewed through the camera lens. There's no delay, no tiny screen, just light. A bit like a submarine periscope, just the other way around. And rather than you looking for U-boats, you're probably seeking out a great pair of tits. The birds. I'm talking about the birds. Well, unless you're Terry Richardson, of course, but now we're getting way too distracted. Anyway, this helps to explain why mirrorless cameras are called mirrorless cameras. Because they're mirrorless. Instead, when you look through the viewfinder on a mirrorless camera, or you look at the rear screen on the back, what you're actually seeing is what the sensor is being exposed to as a digital preview. Why does any of this matter? Well, we'll come onto that in just a second, but for now, aside from that, these two cameras operate in a very similar way. Both can take professional level images, so why is there so much preference towards mirrorless cameras these days over DSLRs? Well, there are actually a few reasons, but the main one should really be pretty obvious, and that's size and weight. Without a big bulky mirror box, mirrorless cameras can generally be made much smaller and lighter, which makes them a lot more portable and less straining to shoot with for longer periods of time. Well, unless you're a gym bro. Bam! In fact, over the years, some manufacturers have taken this concept to the extremes, with cameras like the Panasonic GM1 and Samsung NX Mini being some of the smallest mirrorless cameras ever made. Anyway, being provided with a constant feed from the sensor gives you a live preview of not only what your composition will look like, but also things like the exposure, white balance, and depth of field, all in real time. And that potentially minimizes the chance of making a mistake. Now, with a DSLR, you'll actually need to pay much closer attention to the settings that you've dialed in and to the exposure meter if you want to avoid haplessly snapping off a ton of poorly exposed images without realizing. I mean, not that I've ever done that because I'm a professional. Liar! Needless to say, mirrorless cameras definitely have the upper hand in terms of innovation too, and with most major camera manufacturers now plowing most of their time, money, and resources into growing this sector, these cameras tend to benefit from things like faster burst rates, more advanced autofocus systems, and fancy AI-driven tracking features that actually work and don't just pretend to. Bottom line is, if you want the newest features, they're almost certainly going to show up in mirrorless gear first. So after hearing all of that, you're probably wondering, why would I ever not want to own a mirrorless camera? Well, here's what most people don't tell you. Smaller bodies mean even smaller batteries, and with the EVF and screen constantly on, many mirrorless cameras, especially cheaper ones, drain pretty fast. Don't expect to get through a full shoot on just a single charge, let's put it that way. In fact, it's very much the norm these days for photographers to have to carry around numerous spare batteries with them all day, which obviously costs more money to buy, requires carrying more gear around, and more time spent charging the batteries after the shoot is done. And whilst it's great having a full arsenal of technical features at your disposal, this also means that you get a menu system that can often be, well, let's say, less intuitive. If you've ever used one of Sony's old menu systems, you'll know the pain I'm talking about. Brother, So, whilst mirrorless might be newer, that doesn't automatically mean that they're the best choice for everyone. So, could opting for a DSLR actually come in clutch? Well, before we dive into that, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Wondershare UniConverter 16. Now, this all-in-one software is a serious time saver for both photo and video creators. For photographers, there's an AI image enhancer that can upscale shots up to 8 times, which is great for reviving older images or prepping high-res prints. It also has an image converter that supports formats like PSD and TIFF files, with batch processing for converting, cropping, rotating, and even adding or removing watermarks all in one go. You'll also find an AI background remover for clean cutouts, which is perfect for product or portrait work. And on the video side, you can upscale to 4K or even 8K, auto-generate subtitles, remove background noise, and compress footage using AI video compression, shrinking the file sizes without sacrificing quality. It supports over 1,000 different formats, and yes, it's fully fully batch processable to keep your workflow fast and efficient. Check out Wondershare Uni Converter 16 today via the link below, but for now, let's get back to the DSLR debate. So, whilst they might be bigger and bulkier, DSLRs are by no means completely useless in 2025. Most DSLRs utilize a phase detect autofocus system, which tends to be fairly quick and accurate and isn't always something you'll find on some older mirrorless cameras. This means that for certain types of fast-paced photography like wildlife, sports and automotive, where you need a snappy AF system but can't always afford to shell out for the top of the range mirrorless camera option, an older DSLR might actually be the more sensible option. Battery life is also usually a lot better too, sometimes offering as much as double or even triple the longevity as a mirrorless camera. Plus, they're built tough. This, for example, is a DSLR from 2008 and it's barely got a scratch on it. Meanwhile, budget mirrorless cameras tend to be made from cheaper and lighter weight plastics, therefore will inevitably have a shorter shelf life unless you take really good care of them. That's why even today, many pros still rely on DSLRs for physically demanding jobs. Also, it's important to mention that some of these DSLR camera systems have been knocking around for the best part of 25 years now, so lens options and accessories are available in abundance. And that brings me on to my final point, and it's arguably the biggest one. Price. In 2025, you can pick up a really solid full-frame DSLR like this Canon 5D Mark II for a fraction of the cost of a full-frame mirrorless camera equivalent. Be sure to check out the pinned comment below where I'm going to list out some of what I think are the best full-frame DSLR options you can buy today and where you can find the best prices for them. Take, for example, the world's first full-frame mirrorless camera, the Sony A7 Mark I. Even today, that camera retails for between $400 to $600, depending of course on the overall condition. And in terms of final image quality, this 5D will happily stand toe-to-toe with that A7. Thanks to the mass exodus to mirrorless, the second-hand market is now absolutely overflowing with DSLRs like this, many of which still hold up ridiculously well in 2025. High supply, low demand. It really is a buyer's paradise. And here's the thing, one of the biggest reasons why people don't start photography is because they aim way too high from the very beginning. Everyone wants the latest mirrorless beast with 6K video, AI bird detecting, eye tracking, and more. But while you're sat there still saving up for it, someone else has already picked up a cheap DSLR, started shooting, built a portfolio, and landed their first gig. Gear definitely matters, but experience trumps tech every time.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Of course, there are going to be some downsides to owning a DSLR in 2025, which is important to touch on. Obviously, size and weight is a factor, as we've already covered, though a lot of people will argue that having a larger camera to hold on to actually provides much more stability when shooting, so that really is down to your own personal preference. For hybrid shooters who dabble in photo and video work, a DSLR really isn't the best choice either. Video requirements these days are evolving so fast that it only takes a few years before even some relatively modern mirrorless cameras are considered somewhat outdated. So a DSLR from the 2010s is probably not going to cut it for most serious video work, unfortunately. Also, most DSLRs lack any kind of built-in image stabilization, which is certainly useful for helping to keep your images sharper and free from the effects of camera shake. That said, there are still a lot of lenses that come with optical image stabilization built into them, which is certainly a worthy alternative to look into. Connectivity is also probably going to be an issue. So if you had plans to seamlessly transfer your photos from your camera to your phone for sharing online, this could be a little bit trickier to pull off depending on how old the camera actually is. Now, one workaround would be to simply buy something like a Wi-Fi memory card, as that will allow you to wirelessly connect to the card itself using your phone or a tablet and then transfer the data that way. Again, I will leave some of the best deals that I've found for these types of cards in a pinned comment below. Now, on that note, it's important to remember that when buying a DSLR, you are actually buying a largely discontinued camera range. So things like firmware updates, new lens options, and stuff like that just aren't going to be a thing. This means that long term, you may be forced into buying a mirrorless camera at some point, but for now, I think DSLRs offer a fantastic means of getting you into photography, especially if you're working to a tight budget. But ultimately, what most people care about is the end result. So can these semi-ancient DSLRs still keep up with the quality of a modern mirrorless camera like this? Well, in short, Yeah, whilst DSLRs and mirrorless cameras may look and handle differently, they are essentially cut from the same cloth. And as most professionals will tell you, things really haven't evolved all that much over the last 10 to 20 years in terms of image quality. So to somewhat demonstrate that point, here are some images taken using different full-frame cameras. One of them was taken with this 5D Mark II from 2008, and the others were taken with some other modern mirrorless cameras. Now, which image do you think was taken with a DSLR and why? Leave your guess in a comment below and I'll reveal the answer at the end of this video. But hopefully you'll agree, when taken with the same lighting, same focal length and same aperture, it's genuinely hard to tell which image was shot on a DSLR and which one was taken on a mirrorless camera. I mean, unless you're planning to crop in your images so tight you can practically see your subject's soul, you're really not going to notice the difference. And neither will your clients. So yeah, mirrorless is clearly the direction the industry is going in. There's no argument there. But DSLRs aren't dead yet. Not by a long shot. They're reliable, they're very affordable, and they still deliver stunning results. So whether you're just starting out or simply want to shoot with something without a tech overload, there's a lot to be said for going old school. Either way, let me know in the comments below. Are you team DSLR or team mirrorless? Oh, and the answer was A, by the way. Photo A was taken with a DSLR. Did you guess right?